Hey guys, how's it going? It's me, Bo, back here on the Film Scene Investigation channel. Thank you so much for checking out this video. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at a British gangster classic, The Long Good Friday. Now, this was a movie that had been on my watch list for some time. And what kind of spurred me on to actually watch it recently was that I came across an ex-post, and a load of people were commenting and saying, "Man, this is amazing." Bob Hoskins, Helen Mirren, just loads of people praising it. And I saw the trailer, and I was kind of in the mood for something kind of in the gangster genre, so I decided to check it out. Before we get into it, guys, just a reminder, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. So, The Long Good Friday from 1980 was a movie that was directed by the filmmaker John Mackenzie and was based on a screenplay by the writer Barry Keefe. Now, this movie was completed in 1979, but due to some production delays, the film didn't get a wide release until 1981. Now, the reason for these delays were down to the fact that the producers were scared of any potential retaliation from the IRA, since this movie, I guess arguably kind of portrayed the IRA as somewhat negative. So it was a different time, and at that point the IRA were a real threat. So it got delayed, but eventually got the wide release it thoroughly deserved. As for the story, it's centered around the British gangster Harold Shand, who was played by the late Bob Hoskins. He had just returned back to London from a business trip, and it's safe to say that this was a guy that oozed confidence. He had a lot of business connections and was kind of untouchable. He had a lot of power. I mean, he owned a casino, he owned a yacht. He was rich. Shand also had a right-hand man, a guy that he could depend on, and that was a man called Jeff, who was played by actor Derek Thompson. Now, this guy was the eyes and ears of Shand's operation. Whatever went down, he knew about it, and this was someone that Shand could, not just depend on, but fully trust with his life. After years of criminal activity, Shand was in the process of trying to legitimize his business. This was a big change, but, a step forward. It was something that was going to be difficult, but both Shand and his wife Victoria, who was played by Helen Mirren, together they thought that this was the best option for the future. There was a lot of optimism in the air. Things were moving fast, and a lot of decisions were being made, and Shand wanted to be head of the table, making sure that he was in charge and making sure he earned the most money. As he laid out these plans to expand his ever-growing empire, things soon got complicated when two of Shand's men who worked for him both ended up being killed. One guy was killed in an explosion, a car bomb outside a church, of all places, and another guy was brutally stabbed in the shower. This was no coincidence. This wasn't something, just two random attacks. No, this was a warning. Of course, this threat from some unknown enemy, it left Shand in, disarray. He was confused over, what he had done to deserve this kind of treatment. And so he decided to pull all of his resources together to find out who was responsible. We saw him call up all of his connections to try and gain some information, but no matter how hard he he tried, Shand couldn't get the answers he wanted. Nobody was talking, and according to everyone else, nobody knew anything. And just when you thought that the 2 killings, were enough to send a message, which they did, well, that wasn't enough. And soon we saw Shand's local pub being blown up in front of him. I will say, this scene definitely caught me off guard. I mean, at the time, I expected something to happen, maybe some sort of, gun attack inside the pub or something like that. But after seeing already one car bomb explosion, I wasn't expecting another bomb. So yeah, it definitely caught me off guard. And in terms of the practical effects, well done to everyone, because it looked pretty amazing. I mean, it was a pretty ugly sight with all the pub goers sprawled out, glass everywhere, people injured. And Shand's wife, Victoria, I mean, yeah, she was definitely at that point very concerned, and all Shand could do was try and console her and, well, practically lie and pretend that he had everything under control. Now, some of the themes that I picked up on while watching The Long Good Friday were honesty and betrayal, and that was encapsulated in the Jeff and Harold Shand relationship. These 2 guys were close, they had history together, and it was quite evident that, yeah, they cared for one another. But once Jeff betrayed his boss, well, it signified that ultimately Harold Shand couldn't trust anyone. This all tied in to the Christian allegory that the filmmakers used to tell Harold Shand's story, with Jeff becoming Judas, a liar. Watching that scene play out, it's definitely one of the best scenes in the entire film. Once Harold, realizes that he's been betrayed and by someone that he, deeply cared about, it was definitely impactful, to say the least. And I think that is because betrayal, it's kind of like almost a universal feeling, unless you've been under a rock. Anyone that's lived a life, at times there will be betrayals, and it's not great, but it is very much a part of life. So I think in terms of, in that sense, it's very relatable. What I also found interesting was that the Harold Shand character represented the old school mentality back when a man's word meant something. Honor among thieves, it would be a good expression to use. But times were changing, and someone like Shand, well, he was never going to be able to survive. He was no match for the IRA. He was no match for the mafia. Up until that point, Harold Shand was very much a big fish in a small pond. But once that pond started to develop and grow, suddenly Harold Shand didn't have the resources to take charge. So ultimately, taking all of that into account, this movie is very much a gripping character study of a man whose bravado and naivety blinded him from what was actually going on around him. And once he fully realized what was going on, well, it was too late. That leads me on nicely to talk about the scene where Harold Shand gave his speech on the boat. Now, this was a great moment with Harold expressing his love for the city that he grew up in. And yeah, it was pretty much a very proud Cockney gangster, as all of his friends and business colleagues watched on. Now, the speech itself was a social commentary on the ever-changing Britain of the late 1970s. The old ways were being phased out, and a lot of new developments were underway. It was very much a new era where global capitalism and political violence became the norm. And for me personally, I did find it a little sad, to be honest with you, listening to that speech, because there was a lot of hopefulness in the dialogue that, Bob Hoskins was saying. But to fast forward 40 years and to see what London has become, it's crime-ridden, it's a dump. Now, of course, this was not immediate. It took several years for this to happen. But I guess the real kind of key moment was when New Labour got into power, 1997, Tony Blair, and, opened the floodgates to low-skilled immigration, and which has basically changed the social makeup of the UK, but specifically in London. And I can say that because I'm a Londoner. I can say it firsthand. I have experience seeing and witnessing the changes, and hopefully one day we'll get back to that, but in the meantime, watching these films and looking at the celebratory kind of mood that was captured during that film, it's just sad to see what London's become, fully corrupt, from the judges to politicians to pretty much everyone. Now, one of the best parts of the film, in my opinion, was its pacing, because at no point was I bored, and at no point did the story start to drag or anything like that. It really was pretty relentless, especially when the bombs started going off. I do think by having the film take place over a Good Friday weekend, it kind of heightened the movie's tension. The compressed time frame, well, it kind of made you feel on edge, just like Harold Shand did. You knew that there was a threat incoming, you just didn't know when or where. As for the performances, I have to commend the late Bob Hoskins for his role playing Harold Shand. It really was an impressive performance, as the actor really showed a wide range of emotions. One minute he was very ferocious and angry. The next he was quite vulnerable. I thought it was a really good casting choice to get Bob Hoskins to play this Cockney gangster. And having now seen the film, I completely understand all the admiration that Hoskins received from his work. He really did a good job, so credit to him. Though I will say there were a few minor moments in which I kind of thought Hoskins was a little bit over the top. Now, this was very subtle. It only happened a few times, and it didn't ruin my overall enjoyment of the performance. But just especially when Harold, would get angry, there just were a few moments where it kind of seemed a little bit forced, as if he was, trying too hard to sound intimidating. As for Helen Mirren, I thought she did a very good job playing Victoria, Shand's wife, an intelligent woman who had a lot of loyalty to her husband. She was behind him every step of the way, trying to help him and trying to prevent any more trouble from happening. I like the fact that the filmmakers attempted to establish the Victoria character, giving her some importance rather than making her some generic gangster's mole. Seeing Helen Mirren in this role, it was kind of surprising, because for me personally, I've always seen Helen Mirren as an old lady. I mean, to some, this might sound strange, but my earliest recollection of Helen Mirren was when she played the Queen in the biopic. I think that was in 2006. So, a long time ago. And yeah, I mean, growing up, she was always just a, old looking woman. So yeah, to see her in The Long Good Friday, much younger, yeah, she was definitely a beautiful woman for sure. As for Derek Thompson, I thought he did a very good job playing Harold Shan's right-hand man, Jeff. Now, Thompson is an actor who I've been aware of for many years. He was in a show called Casualty, and that's, I guess, his most kind of famous role. I knew him primarily as a TV actor, so similar to Helen Mirren, seeing this guy, who I'd seen on TV when I was a kid. Yeah, it was just really surprising. And even more so that I thought Derek Thompson actually, delivered a very good performance. And that surprised me that he never really went on to have an established film career. He pretty much became a long-standing, TV actor. And, hey, fair enough. Good luck to the guy. But he showed a lot of potential here. And I'm surprised that he never went on to do more films. Also, actor Paul Barber made a brief appearance as the character Errol, this street thug who Harold needed to try and squeeze some information out of. Now, this was a small role, but quite memorable. I thought Barber did a pretty good job. Now, he's someone that many UK audiences would know from the likes of Only Fools and Horses, a very famous sitcom back here. But me personally, I know him from his brief stint he did in the 90s on the soap opera Brookside. Now, that's a show that I really love. And in a way, Paul Barber on Brookside and in The Long Good Friday, kind of similar kind of thug type characters. So maybe this actor was, forever typecast. Lastly, I have to mention the actor Pierce Brosnan, who played an IRA soldier in the film. Now, it was his debut. It caught me off guard. I had no idea he was even in the film. And so, he had a total of maybe about 2 or 3 scenes. So, yes, it was brief, but still, I think you could kind of see the potential and the, charisma that this young actor had. And so, dislikes for The Long Good Friday from 1980. My biggest dislike for the film would have to be the score that was composed by Francis Monkman. Now, I might get some pushback on this because from what I've read online, many people love this score. They love the soundtrack and, that's fair enough. But for me, I just wasn't that impressed. Now, before I get into the negatives, one of the positives I thought was the main title theme that played at the beginning and at the end of the film. I really liked that, but it was only one track, and for the rest, I didn't really care for it. With the heavy use of synths and saxophones, I just didn't like it. It felt very bombastic at times. Very loud and and I don't know, man. I just think something more toned down would have really kind of heightened the serious nature of the actual story. I totally understand that at the time, this score from Monkman would have been considered contemporary, and I totally get that. And I have to, I can't compare this to today's standards of what we would expect in a motion picture soundtrack. But I've seen a lot of films, especially from that era, the 70s and 80s. And it needed a more direct and kind of more brooding score for me. And I think that would have I think that would have worked better. I mean, a good example of this would have been the shower sequence, the montage when Harold Shand was kind of washing away Jeff's blood after he'd killed him. Now, I mean, look, I didn't really want to see, a semi-naked Bob Hoskins in the shower, but to add this bombastic, really dated saxophone track, yeah, I just didn't like it. I thought that was the worst part of the film. Luckily, it didn't last too long, but hey, if I was in the editing room, I would have cut that out. And so, ratings for The Long Good Friday from 1980. I'm going to be rating this movie a solid 7 out of 10. The Long Good Friday was a thoroughly enjoyable gangster film that, I wish I'd seen sooner. Growing up, I was aware of the film, but I never had it on video or DVD. I never saw it on TV, and none of my friends or anyone really ever brought it up in conversation. So this film, for me, kind of, it flew under my radar. I guess that's the beauty of, doing this film scene investigation and getting to go back and celebrate the, brilliant cinema of the past and, catch up on all kind of the classics that I missed. And this was certainly one of them. And I've always considered the Michael Caine movie Get Carter as kind of the pinnacle of British gangster films. There's been some, brilliant films over the years, so it's, very debatable. But having now seen The Long Good Friday, while I can't say it's the best, it's certainly up there. I can totally understand why this film has been praised so much over the years. If you've seen The Long Good Friday, then please let me know your thoughts and memories in the comment section below. For all those out there who have not seen this one yet, it is, of course, a recommendation from me. I think if you're into gangster films, then definitely check it out. I think as well, if you're in the mood for just something very kind of British, then I think you'll like this one too. That's all from me today, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed this review of The Long Good Friday from 1980. Of course, next week I'll be back with another review. Just in case you haven't, guys, please do consider subscribing. It does mean a lot. And of course, take care.